Aloha! Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about a few common misconceptions on holism and holistic health that I professionally and personally have come across. All right. So one of the main misconceptions that I come across professionally, and I somewhat touched on it in my last video, which was about the part 2 of the rice experiment and dissecting the implications of that experiment. But one of the main misconceptions that I find a lot of people have, including myself, once upon a time before I decided to become just more educated on the subject. I mean, to the point where I went ahead and got a degree in holistic health. I don't expect everybody to do that. I just have a genuine passion for the subject. But even I myself, a person who does have a passion for holism, also carried this misconception for a while, and that is holistic health only pertains to diet and just that it's a sort of model for what kind of diet we eat. And where that is true to some degree, having a holistically based diet, meaning we're just eating from a broad range of food sources and getting as much nutrition from many different kinds of food sources as we can. And so where that is, yes, somewhat true, it's not the full umbrella of holistic health and holism. So the diet itself, as far as what we put into the body, our source of food and nutrition, is but one element of one dimension of holism or holistic health. And it's the one element or one of the elements of the physical dimension of wellness. Other elements on the physical dimension of wellness also include things like physical fitness, but even things like, because it's dealing with the physical body, what we adorn our physical body with, meaning how do we decorate it? What do we put on it? What kind of clothes do we wear? Do we wear any jewelry? Do we feel good in what we're decorating our temple with? If you're somebody that chooses to adorn your temple with tattoos and piercings, that's all a part of the physical dimension, because those are all things that are going to create uniquely fulfilling experiences and avenues for self-expression through the physical body. That's going to be unique to the individual. But again, those are just certain elements from the physical dimension. There are, as I was trained, 6 other dimensions of health and wellness. And the model that I was trained with is called or referred to as the species model, which I think is perfectly fitting. Obviously, humans being a species ourselves. But as we're getting ready to get into the different dimensions, you'll see that the diet, what we're putting into the body, is just one element of a much larger whole. So I'm going to try to also try to throw up some bullets here later in my editing, and to get to the first letter in the acronym species. Sorry, it's been quite a day already. I already had a workshop, so my brain's a little, I think, just fatigued from going through so much information already. So anyhow, the S, so species. The S is the dimension of social. So our social dimension. Wow, I am just kind of nuking this already. So yes, our social dimension of wellness. As I explain to my clients when we're doing coaching, a lot of these dimensions are pretty self-explanatory, but sometimes some of the elements aren't so easily seen, and so I usually like to try to expand on them just a little bit, so that's what I'm going to do here. Our social dimension, it's pretty much like it sounds, how are we feeling fulfilled in our social lives? And so for that dimension, that's going to be unique to each individual, because to an extrovert, your social dimension is going to look way differently than an introvert. How you get nourished and fulfilled is just completely uniquely different. And so that's why too, these are all dimensions that we have to look at through our own subjective perspectives that are unique to our experience. And they cannot, I'll repeat, cannot be based on other people's opinions, perspectives, or beliefs on the matter. It just won't work. And so if I am a person who is an extreme introvert, and yet I keep relating to my social dimension and comparing it to, say, how I see extroverts doing it, and I might see said extroverts either on social media or whatever, I am going to pretty quickly start finding myself in an unhealthy place, because I'm probably going to start feeling certain kinds of emotions with doing the whole comparison thing. And then I'm probably going to start feeling like I am doing something wrong because I am not creating a social dimension that is similar to, say, this super extrovert over here. And so, that is why it is really crucial to look at these things only from your unique perspective, because only you will know how you're feeling in the fulfillment gauge with these different dimensions. And so social, pretty self-explanatory, but like with this dimension and all the dimensions, they have to be measured through your own experiences, perspectives, and the sense that I usually invite clients to gauge how full that gas tank is by tapping into how fulfilled do you feel by that dimension. All right, so that is the S in species. All right, getting to the P, that's the physical. So yes, does include diet, but also includes everything from just physical wellness. So are you, do you maintain some kind of exercise regimen, and, just walking to just even general movements. So, you don't have to get into a gym every day to get fulfillment out of your physical body. Maybe you like to walk to work. Maybe you like to get home and turn on some music and dance. It's really that simple. Just how are you feeling fulfilled by the physical body, the physical experience as a human being? Do you enjoy putting certain clothes on, certain pieces of jewelry? Just anything involving the physical body. And that the physical does also include our sexual health. So that particular element would also fall here. All right, so that's the P. So moving on to the E in species, we get to our environment, or, well, because there's two E's, so they could be interchangeable. So sometimes I start environment here, sometimes I go to emotional here. Apparently I went environment here, so that's where we're going to go. So environmental. This one tends to be a little bit trickier for most people. So the obvious one to go to is, how are you living as a human being, and what are your impacts on the environment? Are you connected to those impacts? So in other words, another way to say all this is, are you connected to nature? Are you connected to the earth? Do you care about what happens to the earth, to nature, especially as it relates to your impacts, your carbon footprint? And, this is, a lot of people don't realize this is a very important dimension when it comes to our overall fulfillment, sense of fulfillment, but also our sense of actual happiness in life. When we do connect with nature and we do realize that we are a part of nature and it is a part of us that you can't disconnect, therefore, let me start becoming more conscious and aware of all the things that I do as a member of this larger ecosystem that are impactful to, myself, but also the larger ecosystem. Do you practice like the triangle of reduce, reuse, recycle? I want to pause for a moment on that, because in our culture, the American culture, we're having a bit of a massive setback in just even the recycling part of that triangle. I'm going to get back to the reduce, reuse, but the recycling, we're actually having that privilege almost taken away from us because we've been incredibly irresponsible with it, and we don't even recycle correctly. And so if you can kind of see why even caring how you recycle ultimately leads to your overall wellness and sense of fulfillment, then I don't think I have to chime too much on the first two R's in that triangle, which are the reduce and the reuse. But they are there. They're the first ones: reduce, reuse, recycle. And we seem to have a hard time with the first one, the reduce. In our culture, it is still a massive problem that we overconsume, and we overconsume beyond, honestly, what this planet can handle. I was just listening to something earlier today that was touching on, if all the other countries in the world consumed at the rate Americans consume, we would need, I think it said, like 5 planet Earths over. That's not good, and that's not something to brag about. That's not something to feel proud of. And my goodness, we need to rein in our addiction, and addiction to consumerism. And it is not going to be a fun process, because it really is our culture. And whenever a culture is asked to shift and to change, usually that doesn't fare well, at least as far as history has to tell it. So I'm looking forward to us making a change. However, I fear that it's going to be another one of those situations where we won't actually change until we're forced to, and we're being forced to because we're at the precipice. And, and we don't have to get that far into it, but it kind of seems to be that's just the way of the human being. So, I don't know what the future has in store for us as far as sustainability. All I know is I every day try to do my part to reduce, reuse, and then recycle last. But I try to reduce first. And for me, one of the ways that I am choosing to reduce this year is I'm challenging myself to have a no or a low buy year. And what I mean by that, it's kind of a big thing on YouTube. So if you want to just kind of do like a general YouTube search for like low or no buy, you'll probably come up with all kinds of videos, including people that do videos on what's called an anti-haul. So meaning the YouTuber will talk about stuff that's coming out on the market, and they might be excited about it. Like, yeah, I think that's going to be cool, but I'm not going to buy it. And then they'll give the reasons why. And I think that is a really cool thing that I see. All those examples are some really cool things that I see happening on YouTube that I see as a part of our counter to our overconsumption. Is there are people that are realizing, oh my goodness, we overconsume and it's just ridiculous. And so they're trying to reduce, the first R of the triangle. And so the environmental dimension is a little bit trickier, a little bit more expansive and comprehensive. So that's why I like to take time to go into that one a little more deeply. All right, so that's the E, getting next to the C. So that's going to be your career occupational dimension. And kind of self-explanatory. And again, we measure all these dimensions by how are you feeling fulfilled. So, you could be somebody doing cleaning, but feel very, very fulfilled by what you're doing. Perfect. But say you're a CEO of some company, doesn't matter how big or small, but just say you're a CEO, you're like the head of the ship, and you are not feeling fulfilled. You're feeling maybe even worse off wellness-wise than before even taking that kind of position. That's a sign that that's not good nutrition for you. And so occupationally, it would probably be in your best interest to pursue something else. And, the what and how, I hope to get into that in a different video, because that does require a different set of, it's just different content for a different video is pretty much what I was trying to say. All right, so that's the C. So getting to the I. So this is our intellectual dimension. And it's an interesting one because it can be nourished with all kinds of things. Like really basically anything that activates your mind, your learning capacities, just even sort of fine-tuning them. I know a lot of people do, like there's all kinds of brain apps to just keep expanding and practicing the activity of the brain from doing like quick reading, speed reading, to comprehension, to math, even doing like being able to do quick conversions like percentage conversions and stuff like that. So all of that are all of those things, like those kinds of apps, are ways that you can absolutely enhance your intellectual dimension. Enhancing that dimension does not require going back to school or require taking like higher learning courses. But if you do, that is one way to enhance that dimension. To even just, like for me, for example, I'm a lifelong student. I plan on learning for the rest of my life. Whatever crosses my path that I find interesting, you better believe I'm going to be diving into it and probably at least looking up some articles to buying some books and just becoming as nerdy as I could possibly be, because I love learning. And quite frankly, I think all of us do. And we had that back in childhood. And I think, for a lot of us, we fall out of love with learning because stuff happens along the way that kind of diminishes our excitement and our fervor for learning, to the degree where we might even develop a belief system that maybe we're stupid, or we're not good at it, or we just don't get it, so why even try? Or maybe it's I have an actual condition, an intellectual or learning disability, and so therefore why try? No, please keep trying. Even if you have intellectual or learning disability, there are so many avenues to help and to keep expanding and nourishing that dimension, that I just really invite anybody to look into resources, to reaching out to social workers, to occupational advisors, to even people in like Voc rehab programs that can actually help people that do have a more disability end of the spectrum to, enhance yourself to the best of your abilities currently, but to also reinforce that, no, I mean, you still have room to grow, and ways that you can keep enhancing yourself. And, when it comes to all of these dimensions, again, it is not in our best interest to compare ourselves to others. Our dimensions, our gas tanks are unique to us and our individual soul's journey. And so please, I invite all of you, don't do the comparison thing. It won't work out in your favor. All right, so that was the I in species. Getting to the other E, just as important and relevant as the environmental dimension, this is the emotional dimension. So another one that's pretty self-explanatory, but it's our emotional health, our emotional IQ. Do we know our emotional selves? Do we understand our emotions? Do we feel that there's any emotional traumas that are unhealed? If that's the case, that dimension is almost always never going to feel fulfilled. And so in order to get true fulfillment out of our emotional dimension, you have to address emotional traumas. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that because a lot of our emotional traumas are painful. And I get it. Human nature, we want to run away from pain and run towards pleasure. But healing work is pleasurable once the healing has occurred. But most of the time, we have to go back to the trauma in order to heal. And so that's where the painful part is. But just know that the painful part is temporary. Once you do the work and you get to the healing, then it's resolved. You've done the work. There's no need to feel that pain again. And so like with working out, looking at the physical dimension and our physical fitness, weight training, strength training, endurance training. It's not like necessarily fun stuff, and a lot of the times there's pain involved. But you push through the pain, you push through the suck, because there's results on the other side of it. And it's the motivation, but the knowing that there's a positive consequence waiting there for you that fuels you to get through the pain, the crappy stuff. And so this is the same principle when it comes to healing. Just keep holding on to knowing that there's that positive consequence of doing the healing work, of actually getting through the healing and never having to deal with that again. Yeah, I'll take that as a positive consequence. If that means that I never have to work through that again, absolutely, sign me up. All right, and then last but not least is the spiritual dimension. So another one, pretty obvious, but to me, it's one of the most I don't know if the word I want to use is underestimated. I feel like there's a better word in there. It'll come to me maybe. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, in my opinion, I feel like when it comes to health and wellness, a lot of people underestimate how important our spiritual dimension is. So one thing I want to make clear, spirituality does not mean religion. So you can absolutely actually be an atheist and still be spiritual. You just don't realize it. So even if you're an atheist that just believes in basic goodness, that belief system, that concept is a spiritual concept. Whether you knew it or not, it is. And so believing in basic goodness as the fundamental of your spiritual dimension actually will enhance all your other dimensions. And that's the thing about holism, true holism, is all of these dimensions are so interrelated with each other that when one tank gets low, one tank starts getting malnourished, it's going to affect the other dimensions. And so when I'm sitting down with clients, especially if it's a new client to, somebody I've been seeing for a while, and I'm just wanting to kind of check in with how they're doing in all the dimensions, we go there, we grade them all, and we look at, all right, so which one of these are a little on the low side? That gas tank is getting a little on the empty side. What do we need to do to fill that one back up? And when you go for the ones that are underfueled and try to enhance those directly, that can be so helpful on just the whole wellness paradigm, or your wellness paradigm, yes, but your experience of wellness, like how you would relate to like grading your own wellness meter, whether it's like a 0 to 10 scale or empty to full. And but sometimes I also find that going for the more empty gas tanks right off the bat, and by gas tanks I'm using the symbol, or by gas tanks I'm referring to the dimensions, it's just a metaphor, that sometimes certain tanks are a little too low, a little too empty, and if we try going there first, you might find that it's a bit of a struggle, or that you kind of almost even get sucked into a low even more. And so sometimes I will have clients work with other dimensions that are feeling very fulfilled, and to kind of keep tapping into those and to see if we can get some of that momentum and some of that positive energy flowing and siphoned into those more empty tanks. So there's never a right or a wrong strategy in how you flow in and out of your different dimensions of wellness, but it's getting to understand yourself on that multi-dimensional model, that our health and our wellness is not just about the physical. And it's something that kind of just drives me nuts about our culture. like, man, we hyper focus on the physical, either diet or exercise, and it's like, yeah, that's it, that's all that's required for good health. And no, it's not. We are so much more complex than that. So that's it. I really just wanted to keep it at that with dissecting how I was trained with looking at holism and holistic health, going through all of the dimensions that I've been trained to look at, and to hopefully maybe bring some more expansive awareness to this whole subject of holism, but to also just, I guess, maybe debunk that holistic health is just specifically about eating a certain kind of diet and what you're putting into your body as far as diet's concerned. Again, that's one element of one dimension. There's 6 other dimensions. All right, so that's it. If anybody has any questions, comments, concerns, rants, tirades, as long as they're pertinent to the video content, feel free to leave them below. If you actually get into a tirade and it's hateful or anything along those lines, I'll probably delete it. So really just things that are enhancing to the community, please. And all other comments, you can just say them out loud, and then maybe I'll ask you to do a turnaround and see how that might fit towards you if you were looking in a mirror. Sorry, I can't help it. I'm always trying to coach and looking for opportunities to help people grow. All right, so that's it for now, and we'll see you next week. Aloha.